go.
Hey, so we're going to spend a few minutes talking about state of the vineyard in relation to the changes that we're making with this whole new era of climate change and different temperature regimes, and how we're mitigating some of those issues. We're mitigating them on several different fronts. In just a minute, I'll talk about what we're doing within the existing vineyard and changes that we're making. But prior to that, we are definitely looking at what we're planting where in terms of which vines can handle which sites at what elevation. There's big differences that lower sites like the Seven Oaks Vineyard we have over in the Purcellville area, it gets colder in the wintertime, being in those rolling hills of the valleys, and mountaintops get really cold also. So we're having to put hardier varieties on those sites. So where we've lost some of the more tender varieties at the Seven Oaks site, we're coming back with some hardier Austrian varietals. So we've already put in Zweigelt and Blaufränkisch, and this spring we're putting in Gruner Veltliner, and we're really optimistic and excited about those. Whereas the Arterra Estate Vineyard is truly a mountainside site, so it's got this inversion layer, this thermal band on the side of the mountain to our advantage, where the cold air settles below it, the warm air rises. So from about 750 feet to around 1,100 feet on the side of the mountain in this area is a warm band, and above which, the higher you go, the colder you get. So we're able to grow things currently here like Tannat, Roussanne, Petite Syrah that we can't grow at a lot of other sites. There is some risk associated with that, and that's where our pruning and management strategies are changing over the course of time. But so far it's working, and we're doing our best to protect that. The one other thing that we're looking at is exploring more American varieties and hybrid varieties. So we're starting to work some with Traminette and Norton, and we're going to explore some others. So in that case, we're looking for things that are going to be more tolerant of low winter temperatures, more hardy through the wintertime, and more disease resistant. And the concept of what we're dealing with these winter temperatures is that in this era of climate change, it really seems that the baseline winter temperature is a little bit warmer, and that means that the vines, oh, you can delete it. I can.
No, you're going again. Go ahead.
Okay, so I completely forget where I was because we paused because we have poor internet signal out here where we're doing this filming. So where I was at was dealing with winter temperatures that under climate change, the baseline winter temperature is warmer, so the vines don't actually acclimate to as low of a temperature, so they can't handle it as cold as they used to. So this normal warmer winter is also matched with these acute extreme episodes of one night very cold dips. We've all heard now about the polar vortexes, and that's what happens is you're rolling along through a warmer than they used to be winter, followed by a colder than ever used to get extreme dip. And those one nights can actually do a lot of damage to the vines. They can outright kill the vine, they can kill the trunk, they can cause dieback to a lower point on the trunk, they can cause damage to the buds that are on the vine so that those buds either die or grow but are not fruitful. So there's a number of different issues with this winter temperature, and the hybrids and the American varieties are more tolerant of that. As an aside, another reason that we're looking at some of the American and hybrids is because they have gone through evolution and or breeding, they have more of a shakeup in the genetic profile compared to these classic European varietals that have been clonally propagated for hundreds or more years, selecting the exact same plant for the exact same genetic profile and taking cuttings of it. When you do that, when the genetics of the grapevine stay the same for really long periods of time, and the diseases, which evolve very quickly, are adapting to take advantage of that stagnant genetic profile of the grapevines, the disease pressure gets worse and worse and worse, and it creates more problems for us, makes us do more handwork, makes us have to spray more. Whereas if we have breeding programs we can change the genetic profile to some small extent and actually kind of stay better one step ahead of the diseases. So there's a lot of really good breeding programs coming out of Europe that are combining the domesticated vinifera varieties, which are the names that we all know and are familiar with wild type vinifera varieties out of the Mediterranean area. And these breeding programs are producing really high quality stock that can produce wines pretty much what we're looking for quality wise. They just come with a new name, and this is going to be part of the new pattern, is putting in new different things over the course of time so that the diseases don't have quite as much advantage of the stagnant genetic profile of the grapevines. This is further exacerbated that under climate change, the nighttime temperatures are warmer, and in our region specifically, we already are warm nights, and we are damp, and we are damper nights, warmer, damper nights, and this actually fosters the ability of the diseases to multiply and thrive overnight and further exacerbates the disease pressure. So these breeding programs are going to be one of the key answers to sustainable viticulture moving forward under climate change. The last point we come to is what we're actually doing in the vineyard, and I'm going to show you, in a way, 3 different versions of what we're doing, one of which I don't have a picture of to put in this video, but we'll have on our newsletter that's going to go out to finalize what we're working towards. But the phrases I'm going to throw at you as we go through these different versions are cane pruned, and then cordon trained spur pruned, and head trained spur pruned, and where we're at in relation to those. So I'm going to show you the first example of the way I had grown vines for pretty much since 2003. And in pursuit of high quality and self-regulation of the vine, I've been doing what's called cane pruning. So there's an example here of once we finish our winter pruning, what the vine looks like when it's getting ready for springtime to come. So what we did, you can see there's these 2 big cuts in the middle. So each of these in the middle had a big arm going up and out with all our upward growth, all originating from these, which were kind of like trunk extensions. They got cut off to remove everything except 2 shoots that originate from this, what we call the renewal zone right here in the middle. So all the infrastructure is gone. We have this really short little trunk, and we have 2 new canes tied out, and where these buds are is where our new shoots are going to grow for this coming season. So this has worked really nice for efficient management and high quality viticulture. We're doing this right now only in our Petit Verdot block. Eventually we'll change this, but we're in process of changing all the other blocks to a different version of pruning. What I liked about this was old wood tends to have more problems with chronic diseases, so we maintain younger, fresher wood in the profile is a nice healthy vine. Relatively smooth bark in this growing zone area, not this rough coarse bark that holds more of the inoculum for pathogens to be released in the coming season. And we have this really nice kind of spacing to work with, and when we thin, we tend to just kind of keep every other shoot, and it's really fast and easy to thin those out. This though was leading to problems in the more tender varieties, that since we have a very limited number of buds on here, and Tannat and Roussan and the sensitive varieties, if we get damage to these buds from these winter episodes that we're talking about, we don't really have anything to rely on, and the damage tends to happen from the back down, so you could lose a lot of this and really suffer in terms of yield if there's damage to this. So there's not much of an insurance policy for this. This is ideal for a climate that's a little bit more moderate. Great for quality, but is starting to have its problems in terms of the insurance of that these buds are actually going to grow well. And we also were having a hard time getting strong growth of these renewal canes, that for some reason we were getting strong growth out here but not really in the center, so we weren't always able to generate 2 really strong canes from the center. So we're going to walk away from that to the first step change, which is right up the hill where we're going to go. So we're going to show you where we're switching from this to cordon trained and spur pruned, which basically means instead of resetting this every year, cordon trained spur pruned is once this is tied to the wire, this becomes named a cordon, and it becomes a permanent trunk extension that then we grow from. So we're going to go look at that. So we're going to take a few steps up the hill.
Talk about Tanat.
What?
Tanat.
So this is where we pulled out a bunch of Cabernet Sauvignon vines, and we're going to put in more Tanat because we found that people like Tanat and we never quite have enough of it. So more is going to go in there. Alright, so come right around here, right at the front, good spot to look. So when I talk about that more permanent extension of the trunk called a cordon, that's what this is. So you can see how the trunk comes up and it keeps going. So when we've got the bidirectional within the row, goes both directions, and this stays. The version here is that we keep these growing points, and they're called spurs. And each year we will cut down to 2 good buds at the bottom so that we can grow 2 shoots if we need them, or we can thin it down to 1 as these were. And so this is called a spur, this is called a cordon. It's basically a permanent trunk extension that stays here. In the old days, before there was issues of winter damage, you would select how many spurs you wanted to keep, and you would just go ahead right in the winter time and you'd cut these all down to these 2 buds right away, and you're done, and you wait until springtime. The new trend that we're following is that we're leaving these spurs really tall. When we leave them tall, and I actually like them just a little bit taller, the ones at the very top, the buds at the very top, will be the first to grow in the spring. What happens is the vine wants to grow up a tree to get as high as it can to capture sunlight. So it puts as much effort as it can into its highest growing point. So it collects its hormones and its energy in its highest growing point. These open up first. If you were to just let the vine grow and it did that, it would then absorb these lower buds basically into the trunk, and they wouldn't grow. If we time just right when we cut this down, then we can take advantage of delayed dormancy of these lower buds, which will give us an advantage of prolonged hardiness and where you need some frost avoidance for a period of time without compromising the yield. So our timing is that when these topmost buds are fully puffed up and just about to unfurl their leaves, we go through each block as it's doing that and very rapidly cut them down to these shorter 2-bud spurs. So if we do it too late, the vine wants to think this is absorbed into the trunk, growth is up here, all the energy goes up there, it robs the energy from down here, we lose the fruitfulness of these. If we make this cut too early, then we lose the advantage of these growing first and delaying these. So the point is, if we get our timing just right, these lower buds are maintained dormancy longer. So we get those spring, March like now, episodes where it gets really warm and things want to grow and then it snaps really cold. We're trying to have these buds be at risk, not these buds that we're actually counting on for the season. So this is a double pruning system where we early get everything cleaned up for the wire so we can just quickly make the second cut and try to protect these buds for winter dormancy, and for getting, we do this right about a 10-day delay and when these lower buds are actually going to grow, which will give us some frost avoidance on lower sites. So this is a relatively easy change to make, and there's advantages and disadvantages to it. So the advantages we had is we're gaining this hardiness and protection, and hopefully preserving our crop, our yield, our integrity of everything. The downsides to it is all this coarse bark through here harbors a lot more disease inoculum for the springtime, so you get some more problems with how close this is to your fruit zone of disease here from the following year wants to spread into your vine and into your fruit. So there's some disadvantage to that. Over the course of time, if you keep this, it'll get really big, really heavy. And in the middle of the row, the wire will really start dipping and sagging, and it puts a lot of strain and stress, and it creates kind of an odd, hard to work with form within the vineyard. So we want to then figure out how to preserve this advantage and get rid of this disadvantage. If you remember talking about cane pruning, it was really nice to have these short little trunks instead of this great big long trunk. So we're starting to make a change to what we're referring to as head trained and spur pruned. So we've got the first transitional step of this that I'll show you going on here, but you can always look at Instagram or pictures of how a lot of vines are grown in Spain where there's no trellising at all, and you've seen vines grown as what's referred to as a goblet. It's 4 or 5 trunks, and then the canes just grow and spread out, and it looks kind of like a big spider. And that works really good in dry climates because they get more shade and cooling where all the fruit is right in the middle of the vine. It wouldn't work for us because if we trap all of the fruit in one little pocket in the middle, we would stay too damp and we would have too much disease pressure and probably lose that crop. But if we take their kind of goblet circular form of multiple trunks and just linearize it into our trellis system, then we could get the advantage of having multiple trunks come up and have the spurs on top of those trunks instead of having this arm that runs horizontally along the trellis. So the transitional step that we're in can be seen right here. Wherever we can find it, we're looking for having 3, sometimes 4 trunks, and it takes a little bit of time for us to get there. So we eliminated all that infrastructure in this vine. We found a new good shoot that can be 1 trunk going to the right.
It's trying to, okay, go.
All right, so wherever we can, we're establishing multiple trunks. So I've got 1 to the right, 2 to the middle, which isn't perfect because it's a split off of 1. What we'll do is this other low growing point, we'll grow 1 or 2 shoots off of it this coming season. We'll eliminate this left split and we'll put a whole 3rd trunk going this direction. We'll have 1, 2, 3 trunks. At the top of each trunk, we'll start growing a couple shoots this year. So we'll cut it here in the springtime. We'll have 2 shoots growing off of each trunk. For the following year, each of those 2 shoots will be cut to a 2-bud spur, which will then allow us 4 shoots on 1 trunk, 4 shoots on another trunk, 4 shoots on another trunk, and we'll have 12 shoots on the vine, which is what we're looking for with these straight, more vertical trunks, and then our spurs and our fresh growth up here in the canopy that will allow us to do the same double pruning system without having these horizontal extensions on the wire. Should give us that winter protection that we're looking for, maintain our yields, maintain our quality, our spacing, our efficiency, and our management. So that's the in the vineyard approach to how we're dealing with climate change with our vinifera varietals.